All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Lynn Liu. I'm the CEO of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, and I'm a professor of chemical engineering at Princeton University. So if you were expecting Dr. Sanjay Kutan, well, I'm not Dr. Sanjay Kutan. I was told about 12 hours ago to stand in for him because Sanjay, unfortunately, is down with the flu. So you'll have to bear with me. When I looked at this opportunity, I thought, well, this is a little intimidating because I haven't thought too much about digitalization. But I figured, I'll go with it, and then I'll learn from you all. It's just I'll be learning in front of all of you, okay? So that's how I'm approaching this panel. We have an esteemed panel here. We're talking about digitalization and decarbonization. We have two solution providers. We have two solution adopters, and then we have my friend Bo Serb-Simonson here, who leads the Maersk McKinney Moller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, who's going to provide this macro perspective on digitalization and decarbonization. So perhaps I should start out by talking a little bit about decarbonization, and then come back and talk about digitalization, and then open it up to the panel. We've heard plenty at Singapore Maritime Week already, the IMO targets for 2030 and 2050. It's to reduce our carbon intensity by 40% relative to 2008 levels by 2030, and then 50% absolute carbon emissions by 2050. Now, these numbers are not Paris-aligned, right? And so in July, when MEPC 80 is going to meet, I think there's a strong chance that we're going to raise our ambition to net zero by 2050. This is a tall task for this industry when we rely on so much fossil fuel to propel our ships. And so the way to think about the decarbonization or the energy transition is to chunk it up, to think long-term, where we are going to have zero carbon fuels. We don't have them today, right? So we need to work towards that. But what that means is also in the short term, we need to do what we can with what we have now. That means biofuels, you heard from the earlier panel, LNG, if we do it right, that can cut emissions. More importantly, to think about energy savings devices or fuel savings devices, right? Because if you can save fuels, it's better for your pocket, it's better for the environment. And actually, looking into the future for net zero, for zero carbon fuels, fuel-saving devices are also very important because these zero carbon fuels are lower in energy density, right? So if you can use less of it, you can bunker less frequently, you don't have to use such a large fuel tanks, et cetera. Suffice to say that whatever you do, you need to start measuring. You need data, you need to start measuring, you need to start tracking. And I think that's where digitalization comes in. But I think digitalization also means different things for different people. I mean, I can imagine for a ship owner, digitalization could mean, well, it's predictive maintenance, right? I can know when my engines are going to fail. I'm going to fix them before they fail out at sea. For a charter or for an owner, digitalization could mean, well, it's an opportunity and a tool to improve performance. And then for ones that are thinking about decarbonization, it's a way to track emissions. But it means different things to different people. And just yesterday in TradeWinds, I read about Grey Wings, where they have the sea GPT. So I guess for them, digitalization means easier communication between seafarers and better connectivity between vessel and shore. And then for me as a professor, digitalization for me, I think about big data, I think about AI, I think about machine learning. What do you do with the data today that can allow you to do predictive learning in the future, right? So I think it means different things for different people. And I wrote down this that I thought I wasn't going to remember, so I would say it. That perhaps digitalization means, a tool to make lives better and easier for both decision making, but also by making decisions for us eventually. Maybe I'll start by asking the panelists what digitalization means to them. Bo?
Okay, thank you very much. Digitalization to me, so now I'll talk about my professional life. Having worked with multiple ship owners, I have seen the growing importance of digital, and I've seen how digital creates the transparency and the insights to support collaboration, to support smarter ways of working, to support understanding, giving a feedback loop, basically to give you the opportunity to learn from the decisions you make, to follow up and see whether the choices you make, the investments you make, the decisions you make that you think have a positive impact actually also work in real life. So I think that's really the short of it. So it kind of becomes almost the foundation for building collaborative arrangements with putting multiple companies, parties together, trying to optimize on the totality, gives you the opportunity to do that, gives you the feedback loop and the insights to make sure that things are going well. So all together, it becomes just extremely important. And I think, and that's what we'll be talking about today, with the new opportunities, we will see even more of that coming. And I would also say here as an introduction, and we need it, because like you just said in the introduction, the trajectory, the decarbonization path we're looking at is going to be extremely challenging, and it could potentially be very expensive. But if we do it right, then we also have opportunities to make huge savings without it actually being expensive, actually being comes with a benefit in terms of we'll be saving money by doing it right. So I think that's the short of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo. So an all-encompassing enabler / tool for now. Okay, so let me go to solution adopters. So Han-Young is the group head of technology solutions at Kwak Singapore Limited Group. So tell us what digitalization means to you.
Actually, there are two phases to digitalization. I think the first part that we take is a very simple one. You digitize. You digitize things that are on paper into electronic form. Yeah, so that's the digitization part. And then you digitalize by then putting the whole process into a digital, a more holistic process, leveraging on all the technologies available. So I think for shipping industry, actually, I think we have gone through the phase of digitizing a lot of data, and that's what we have gone through. And I think we are also very particular about the quality of data. Yeah, so I think the ultimate goal of the digitalization is to make your work more productive and to help us make decisions, help us to optimize our operations in order to achieve our decarbonization goals and so on. I think that part of digitalize is important. Digitize is important, and then after that followed by the digitization to ensure that the whole things that you do right from the beginning, collecting the data, can all be used in a useful way. Because in order for us to leverage some of these solution providers, good solutions out there, I think having good quality data help us to leverage on the solutions out there. Yeah.
That's a good point, to make the difference between digitize and digitalize. And I would say, yes, I think digitizing is important and has come a long ways, but I think we still have a long ways to go. I mean, I was on a ship recently, and I saw the bunkering of a ship, and I saw the poor captain working through like this stack of paper in order for the bunkering to happen. So it's still very manual, right?
That's right. I think there's still quite a lot of opportunities out there for us to actually further digitize.
Yeah, thank you. Susanna. So Susanna heads the Sustainability and Decarbonization Desk at Swire Shipping. Susanna, what is your view on what digitalization means?
Well, it is absolutely essential for our decarbonization roadmap, the part of digitalization. We see that there's 3 pillars, and one of them is energy efficiency, fleet efficiency. As you mentioned earlier, every future near zero emission fuel will be much more expensive, and the fact and the efficiency and the performance of both the vessel and the voyage will be even more important in the future. I usually give as a highlight that SailGP was recently in Singapore. I'm a very big fan of sailing, and the data they collect 50,000 data points a second. You know, this is how far we are, and this is where I'm not saying that we should all collect 50,000 data points a second, but that's what we should aim towards too, because then with all of IoT and artificial intelligence, we will start to be able to predict and have better performance in energy efficiency on the vessels. The other part, you also mentioned it. You mentioned energy efficiency technology and how do you measure their contribution to the reduction of emissions. So if we do not have good sensors, if we do not have the facility to actually assess what those energy efficiency technology devices on the ship will reduce, then we do not know which ones we should be investing or not. This is the lowest hanging fruit for any ship owner. But, you know, just want to put a little note that hopefully you will talk. Still today, I work for both Swire Shipping and Swire Bulk, so liner shipping and bulk shipping. We still have difficulties in certain owners to share their data with us. So
yeah, we'll come back to challenges later.
Yes.
I know there are lots.
So yes, so maybe Soren can continue now.
Okay. So I wanted to come back to challenges later, but I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, so it is absolutely essential, and for all ship owners and operators, we should share our data as much as possible, and because it is the lowest hanging fruit that owners have available.
Yeah, thank you for that, Susanna. Let's go to Matt. Matt Hyder is the CEO for Nautilus Lab. Don't pitch your companies. Tell us what digitalization means to you.
Yeah, we don't have to pitch. It's.
I'll give you an opportunity in a little bit.
It sells itself. So, no, I think when you think about digitalization, there's a couple of points I would make, and I don't want to belabor them because I think Bo and others have made them very clearly. But there is this certain ability to impact the way people work, right? And that's really the opportunity around artificial intelligence and high-frequency data today, right? Is collating it and using it to synthesize insights that combine with human intelligence to increase day-to-day efficiency. When you unlock those systems, getting some of the challenges, that helps to enable better collaboration among stakeholders. And that is super important to actually achieve maximum efficiency in the market. And I think, you know, to answer your question succinctly, that's where we really see the opportunity for digitalization to have a massive impact, right? We work in an industry that has very outmoded structures. When you think about the Noon report, the commercial agreements that are in place, speed restrictions, all of this type of infrastructure that's mostly commercial that holds us back from achieving maximum efficiency. And so that's really where we see the biggest potential for digitalization is in driving that systemic transformations that's needed. You know, we can debate till we're blue in the face about how to achieve 5 to 10% fuel efficiency, and we should, because it matters today, and that's how we achieve immediate decarbonization. But to achieve the long-term goals, to get to 2050, to be a net zero industry, it requires systemic transformation across stakeholders that has to be supported by real, verifiable, trusted data. And I would come back to trust and the truth as being the single biggest thing we can get out of digitalization.
Thank you for that. Soren Meyer, CEO of Zero North.
Yeah, thanks for being last. It's very easy to follow up then. So I think like digitalization, what is that? Being a little bit controversial, I think it's a buzzword for doing business. Like I don't think it's in like, it used to be a word you put on like your strategy deck in the boardroom, and then you kind of, the company will be more valuable because you kind of had to say that you're digital, right? I think it's about change management. It's the data, the technology side will solve. Like that's like either the companies themselves, service providers. That's not the challenge. The challenge is the change management. It's actually of having people understand that they need to do something different, right? So connecting shore to vessels, having the vessels understand they actually like. It doesn't matter that we have collect all these data and that we can tell what we should do if we don't do it. So for me, digitalization is all about change management. We're underestimating the vastness of the oceans, and the people at the vessels have to do something different, and we need to respect that with a very high level degree, and it start at shore and going to the vessels and combine them, right? Meaning that, like, it's a little bit, I remember doing quite a lot of PowerPoint slides through the years and sending one version to somebody else, and then they did a version, and who now owns the master, right? Now we just collectively work in the same document, right, and update on the same. But we need that same work together, right? So what is hampering getting internet connectivity of vessels? Like, it's not about new fuels and so on. It will also be about that. Right now, it's about change management. It's about getting, like, access to be able to collaborate. We forget how big the oceans are.
Thank you for that. So now, maybe you can tell us the value proposition of Zero North, and then I'll come back to Nautilus Lab.
Yeah, I can do that. Of course. Like, I think it's more what's the value proposition of the industry, right? I think that's more important than Zero North as a company. I think it's more about, like, and I think Matt touched upon it as well. There's different stakeholders across the value chain are using different data sets to take their decisions. The most, like, outcry example for anybody being in operation, like, how many times have you not taken over a voyage that's been fixed by the chartering, and then, like, in 9 out of 10 times, the voyage end up yielding a lower profit than the chartering kind of said that it would do? Because the chartering was using one set of assumptions to fix the voyage, like shortest distance, a super simple distance table, a human entered weather factor, and I made this great, amazing fixture, right? And I'm the king of the shipping company. And then hand it over to operations, the voyage is over, and suddenly I didn't make the money, and then a chartering come running after operations saying, what did you do to my voyage? Yeah, I just sailed in the real weather, in the real distance, with the real vessel, sorry. So how do we connect people on using the same data set from the cargo owner to the charter, to the vessel owner, to the operator, all the way down to the bunkering, right? So if I had to pitch a little bit, it would be, we go fairly deep into the bunker space as well. And the reason for us investing in software on the bunker, we heard about, you mentioned the stacks of papers on the bunkering, right? So we don't actually know what's the molecules down in the tanks. And I do think that will be, we use too much averages around, right? So if we understand the molecule in the vessel, that we bunkered, then we don't have to make a standard conversion ratio from 1 ton of fuel to 3.1 whatever on CO2. We can actually make the real conversion, right? And then we begin to move a little bit smarter around where are we bunkering, what are we bunkering. And that goes into your voyage optimization, vessel optimization. It goes all the way to which cargo do you put on which vessels. So I think the whole ecosystem is connected.
Yeah. I mean, I think as we think about drop-in fuels too, this becomes even more important because you want assurance on the quality, on the quantity, because then you have assurance on the emissions abatement, right? And so knowing what's in your fuel tank exactly becomes really important. Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about the way that we can drive that systemic transformation, right? And that's certainly what we spend our time doing every day. I think, as Soren said, right, change management is key in meeting folks where they are today is absolutely the imperative. And in order to achieve that change, you have to bring sort of a new approach to the table to make it happen. And so what we spend a lot of our time looking at today is how can we change incentive structures, right? If you think about the way that charter party agreements are written, oftentimes there are only negative incentives for underperformance for owners, and that limits their ability to try to maximize efficiency on a vessel when they don't own the fuel bill. There's also the case of voyage charters, right, where there's speed restrictions built in that prevent the ability to modulate speed in an effective way and achieve just-in-time arrival. And really, across the market, that's what we're talking about, right, is ocean shipping operates in a world where it is hurry up to wait every single day. You take off, you try to outrun uncertainty, you get there early, maybe because you have to tend to your notice readiness, maybe because there's a demurrage opportunity, but what it does is it bakes in a massive amount of inefficiency into the way that we operate every day. And so that's really where we see the opportunity. Obviously, it's built on this foundation of data engineering, machine learning, data science, the type of technology that can actually generate predictive insights that didn't exist before for users to take advantage of. But it's in that connective tissue and really in eradicating the Noon report, I would say, that the biggest opportunity exists for technology to transform here.
Right. So let me go to the potential solution adopters. So you've heard from Soren and you've heard from Matt. Can you tell us what part of your portfolio is digitized and digitalized? And how are you thinking about, you know, the kinds of technologies and solutions that are out there?
We are certainly very interested in all these solutions out there. I think one of the challenges we have is that I think we have the problem of not having that end-to-end view because we are using quite a number of systems from fixing all the way right to the end when we fulfill the voyage. So we are still building up the connection, the integration of data so that we get a good end-to-end view. And then I think the point about change management, the process needs to change. People need to, in a way, believe that all this modeling that we are doing, all this simulation, all these insights that we get from all the solution providers are going to be really effective in bringing us to the goal that we want to. I think we are not starting Big Bang. I think one approach that we have taken is that we did trials with many of the solution providers. We want to prove that it can actually work for us from what we have, and we want to understand what are the limitations that we have, what are things we are not putting in right to get the right outcome. So I think that's the approach we are taking. We are doing, you know, a few vessels at one time, trying to leverage, understand all the solutions and how to get there, to make the best of the solution.
So can I follow up with that? I mean, so what are the general learnings from these trials that you've done? Where are the bottlenecks?
I think we still have, there are some internal data and external data that's required. So I think the internal data itself, I think we are still in the process of ensuring that we have good, accurate data. I think the external data is good, but I think the change management is still one of the bigger challenges that we have. So how do we actually get it right to the people who are on board, right? To believe that all these things are effective in achieving the goals that we want.
Yeah. Thanks. Susanna?
I totally agree about the change management is absolutely key, and I give a little bit of a different perspective, you know, from the technical and commercial areas. They look at efficiency and performance in a completely different way. So, because I have had the advantage of working for both, I am an engineer by study, but I have worked in commercial bulk shipping. For me, it seems that there are silos where they should not exist. So, you know, the technical people see the performance of the vessel as part of their responsibility. And obviously they don't want the data, but sometimes also they do not know how to translate in meaningful ways to the operations team to give instructions to the vessel, because sometimes they are not, you know, you could be collecting data from a third party that is not one of your vessels. The other part is commercial too, that it is the voyage performance side, and there I think that there is huge amount of opportunity with integration with ports information and with weather information to actually continuously improve. I think that part commercial is a little bit more visible, but it's also important for the technical part to understand what data is being collected and how it will impact the performance of the vessel. The challenge is, I see apart from those silos, and those are internal, is the strain that it is at the moment to collect data from the vessel. So for example, and last year, we decided to combine both fleets on the collection of data. We used to do it only for our own fleet. It was about 50 vessels between Swire Shipping and Swire Bulk. But now we are collecting data, or we are aiming to collect data for all of the operated fleet. That is about 250 vessels. So we have scaled up. You know, we start by, it is not easy to find professionals with efficiency that are data collectors, that skilled in understanding what the data is saying, because collecting data is just the first step. What does that mean, and how do you input that into proactively into the voyage to improve performance? But also, apart the collection of data, as I was talking earlier, you know, if we charter in a vessel that uses, for example, Soren's Zero North technology, and if we have a different one, I'm promoting you, and we have a different one, it will have a requirement for the crew to set the same amount of data in 2 separate templates. This is totally inefficient and totally contrary to what we should be aiming at. I think that platforms should have a standard collection of data that then could be used for different platforms, because this is what would really make sense, and it will give us then the opportunity of actually sharing more information like that. So we would not be so bound to, we stick with this collection of data, so we cannot look at other systems or softwares that could assist. And then finally, it is, you know, there's legacy issues about sharing data, especially anything related to fuel consumption. You know, very recently, we have a vessel on long-term charter that we have asked for the sea trial results so we could help complementing the model that is done for the analysis of that particular ship. And, you know, the reply we got back was, no, we're not going to share. That is a situation that is not realistic. And they failed totally to understand that we will not see those results. It is just part of that model that will allow us to build the curves, the optimum curves for that ship faster. So this whole part of people not willing to share information and just, I find it really a very large obstacle to move digitalization forward.
Thank you for that. Maybe we come to Bo at a macro level then. I mean, you've heard of the challenges, you know, transparency, sharing, siloing.
Yeah, and I've been in the middle of that myself.
Okay,
and I
so
also
elaborate.
have to say that sometimes you get the feeling that it's voluntary whether we want to share data or not. So I think there is a point in trying to understand where are we going and why is it that we have to come together to share that data. And I believe that the potential is so huge in these potential savings that they will come. And where will they be driven from? They will be driven from the supply chain perspective, from the consumer, the end product, the need for lower carbon intensity on the end product. And when you start to zoom in on that and get the transparency on where are the wastes in my supply chain, there will be a very strong need to eliminate that waste, and that will drive, I believe, a lot of those inefficiencies out of the system. So the supply chain perspective is extremely important, and the other side of that is the regulatory aspect. So regulatory forward, we can also expect will be driving this much, much stronger than it is today. And we've seen the EEDI and the EEXI and now the CII, and the CII starts to bite, and a lot of companies are acknowledging that this has a real change. And I would say to that, yes, it does, actually, it does. And we can expect much more of that to come. So from the regulatory side also, there will be a drive. It'll be IMO for sure, but it'll also be other regulatory bodies that will actually drive. And you can say those that don't want to share data, maybe they're just not part of the game in the future. So I don't think it's going to be a voluntary thing. I think it's going to be pushed very hard. And when you look at the industry today, there are huge differences between the levels of maturity, the levels of efficiency in the system. And some can get away with never cleaning the hulls, and you waste 15% of energy just by doing that, but it works. And from a commercial perspective, maybe it's okay for that local owner, that local operation to not bother about it. So today you see an industry where you have some very high-end performance by very mature companies and collaborative arrangements, and you see a lower tier of the industry that is hardly not doing anything at all about this. And to get to zero in the most, I would say, for society effective way as possible, we need to get we need to get that on par. We need to lift a part of the industry needs to be lifted, because that's where the lowest hanging fruits are, by supply chain, by regulation.
Right. Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say a couple of thoughts. I think that's absolutely right. In terms of the North Star, the why that change is going to be driven, I think supply chain demand and the demand side is really where it comes today. I just want to call out two things. One is we work in a really low trust space, right? An owner gets a ship from a shipyard. They don't trust the sea trial data is accurate. They charter the vessel out for 10 years. Their counterparty doesn't trust that those curves are accurate. They get a new report every day that describes the performance of the ship. They don't trust that that data is accurate. And so we live in a world where, because of these legacy systems, it is extremely low trust. And that's really where, coming back to the point, where digitalization has a chance to drive that change. And if we can look at correcting those incentive structures, making it so that your counterparty sees that there's benefit and not risk in sharing that information, that is the way we actually get to the change most quickly that has to happen. And I definitely think there are certain imperatives that are coming along that are going to increase the demand for that. I think CII puts pressure on the owner, and that puts pressure on the charterer to operate most efficiently. I think EU ETS actually puts a price on CO2. Right now, CO2 and the cost of emissions is essentially zero for most businesses. There is no compelling reason to consider CO2 emissions if it doesn't tie back to business outcomes. So there are these market imperatives that are going to change things, but ultimately we have to fix that trust divide and make it risk-free or incentivized to share the right information at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've highlighted all the incentives and the benefits of doing this. So my next question then is, why are we moving so slowly?
I'll start. I think that the reason is already highlighted. First, it is still not very clear, for example, for pure connectivity on ships. And I do think that, the ships of the future will have, some of the sensors, some of this high frequency data already embedded from new construction, that it will be, a step forward.
So the physical infrastructure piece.
Yes.
Okay, take that aside.
Okay, from why hasn't it moved so fast? I think that there's still the novelty.
How do we get over this trust thing? I'll be more specific. How do we get over this trust thing?
I think there is, just by setting example, like you mentioned, that it is beneficial for both. In that particular case of this client that did not want to share that data, I appealed that they were in similar forums than us, they had similar ambitions than us, we would not see the model, and that we would be willing to share all of the data we collected during this period with them. And this is when you say it has to benefit them too. So it is back to that question is, do you know how your vessel performs? Do you know how it will get better? So it has to be that willingness of sharing data. We in Swire Shipping and Swire Bulk, we are very keen to share our data. We don't think that it's not part of our confidentiality part. It is not a commercial advantage in the future. It is just data, and it is how you perform. And if you want to see continuous improvement, you cannot think about not sharing data. So it is still the trust issue, and I do not know how to go around that, but maybe some of my colleagues will give me a hint of how do I get better at sharing data.
If I can add, I think we need to be also a little bit humble around, have we not moved fast? This panel wouldn't have been here a long time ago, right? So at least on our perspective, we started Zero North less than 3 years ago. We've gone from no people to 250 people. We've gone from 0 vessels to 4,000 vessels on the platform. We've gone to people really seeing that they need to collaborate on this, right? Most of the customers that we're having is on the chartering side, enabling them so being able to model without any sea trial data. We do that now because we can't get access to the owner's data on that, right? So I think we move fast. At least if you're working to North, I think you will echo that you think things just move fast. Go back 2 or 3 years ago, look at the media, you wouldn't talk about voice optimization. So again, I think we are moving much faster than we realize, but because we're right in the middle of it, we don't feel that we're moving fast. I think that's one perspective. And the other perspective of that is that most of the vessels, the charters, are disregarding the warranties and just going them optimal because they understand if they have a speed claim, they maybe have a 50% chance, 25% chance to recover any of that. There's much more money on actually selling the most optimal way and disregard the speed claim. That means you need the software to tell you how the vessel performs without asking the owners. So I think we're moving fast. I think we're enabling the cargo owner, we're enabling the charters to take these decisions without actually having to ask the owner. So I've seen multiple examples where we know more around what's happening on the vessel than the owner do themselves because we use the entire big data set to model that, right? So I think it's moving fast.
Yeah, I think, and we certainly see the same thing, right? When we work with folks who don't have access to the right data, you can make predictions very well using data sets you've aggregated to fine-tune predictions. It doesn't solve the core challenge here, which is how do you bridge the gap between the two? And I think to your question, right, there are ways that you can make it, at the very least, risk-free. What we've done in bridging that gap between counterparties is to say, okay, there's an exclusion, like this data won't be considered in claims. And so there's at least that ability to say, we'll share information, but we're not going to issue you a performance claim because you decided to share it, right? That's kind of the first step. I think down the road, there are interesting things that we can do to solve, say, fuel savings, sharings models, bonus model schemes, the types of things that could actually incentivize data sharing and performance. I think, what makes it so hard, my take would be, is that we're talking about systems that are ingrained, right? And you have two counterparties who are used to being pretty, set in the way that they negotiate their contracts and really concerned about setting new precedent, right? It's that concern around, if I agree to this, I set a precedent, and then they're going to come back and ask for this every time, and I don't know what it's going to mean for the future of my business. And so we have to de-risk it and create that sort of safe environment for it to occur. And that's really how we'll solve it most quickly, and that's the way that we can actually bridge the gap between the two parties around sharing this type of information.
Okay, so that's from a contract perspective. Hanyo?
Yeah, I do agree that actually we are moving. I think at least we got started. Maybe we are not moving as fast as we should, but we are certainly building some of these infrastructure to be able to collaborate with different solution providers to exchange data securely. I think those are fundamental things that we need to do. And I do echo Susanna's view around, having certain standards or having certain standards where we have a choice, where we can port whatever we collected, we can port it to different solution providers. It makes the market really probably more competitive and drive everybody to do better. Yeah.
So basically having rules, having guidelines around data sharing. And then, for us, when we do this biofuels trial, we have a lot of data. And so I think there's also an opportunity to think about aggregated data, right? Not every single person needs to see every single bit of data. And so it's what's relevant. And if there are opportunities to aggregate and sanitize data and share appropriately, that probably is another way to go.
Yeah, that comes back to the idea of permissioning, right? And I think if you're an owner, how can you control what gets shared and when so that you can feel confident when you share? And it's really pertinent for things like voyage optimization or managing fuel spend on a voyage, where you might not want to share your full performance curve, but if you can share an instruction that helps to optimize, and that's in the mutual benefit of both parties, it creates a really interesting opportunity as a place to start.
What happened to the timer? I had like 20 minutes, and now it's 8. Okay. So I'm gonna, Bo has something to say, and then I want to switch gears and talk about digitalization and decarbonization, because I thought I had 20 minutes. Bo?
I think this conversation about how can we speed it up is super interesting. And of course it is about the technology, and it is about the infrastructure. And then I think it is, and it's back to my point before, I think it is about regulation too. And I think what we'll be seeing now in MEPC 80 is a very serious conversation about target setting, including targets for 2030. And that target for 2030 is going to put a lot, I hope, of pressure on our industry to decarbonize as fast as possible, with all hands on deck, with every mean we can find. And we know it's going to take a long time to scale the green fuels. So what is at hand? It is efficiencies. Yep. So we have to come up with some good, very effective regulatory measures that will drive energy efficiency. So a way to speed up is actually to get together and help authorities, help regulators to get some sound, a solid, sound, robust way of getting digital into that space of good regulation, because that can speed up this part of the journey tremendously. And that is right in front of us. I mean, it's MEPC 80 in July, and right after that, there'll be a lot of work on cranking out those short-term measures.
So I'll ask a follow-up question that was asked in Pigeonhole. So with respect to digitalization and decarbonization, so what are the key trends, right, specifics, key trends and innovations that are emerging in this field for decarbonization? I lost that question. Where'd it go? What are the key trends? I lost it. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so you have it. I'm blind, so I can't really see it. But it says, what are the key trends and innovation emerging in the field of digitalization for decarbonization, and how are they likely to shape the future of sustainability and environmental protection? Bo, this is yours.
It's basically what we've talked about here.
But are there specific things that one can latch on now?
I think I really think we have all the pieces. I think the trend right now is to set targets and get going and use the technologies we have. We don't even need GPT to do this. We could do without, I think. We have all the sensors, we have all the algorithms, we have all the stuff. Just put it together and get it to work and set some super ambitious target to pull the entire industry into that. That's the trend we have to watch, I believe.
I'll come back to pulling the entire industry ahead, but I think Matt and Søren are nodding, so I think they have something to say.
No, yeah, for me, it's around when we talk trends, it's about not using buzzwords like artificial intelligence and so on. Like, yes, we all use it. Or machine learning, yes, we all use it. It's like it's just common sense. It's not a business putting your business at a different level because I can say that you're using AI. I think it's around investing and being together with the customers on the change management journey. I think we just need to leverage it down a little bit, be more pragmatic, and get things done. Like the technology is there. So let's not talk about buzzwords. Let's talk about what are we doing. So we've done a lot of mistakes in South North along the last 3 years. I think one of those has actually been underestimating the regulative landscape. So in the beginning, I was like, let's just go for the dollar. There's so much money at stake here. Let's go for that, right? I think that, Bo, you're right. The regulative landscape has to be a guiding star, and that we are in an industrial period where regulation will drive this to a long degree, and we need those regulations to be turned into standardization. Like, we cannot work in an environment where you put in a regulation and then it's up for every provider or every company to make their own standards. So we can talk about that new reports and vessel reporting is not important anymore. We can do hang on, it is important because it is a data set that's being shared across the value chain. It's the only data set, but there's no standards. Why don't we just make a common standard for what is a good new report and how is it validated? I think if we start there, like, then we will come a long way. Will we then use other data sets going forward? Yes. Let's be humble and let's get things done on what's there today.
Matt?
Yeah, we definitely have to work with the best data that you have available today, and sometimes that is certainly the new data set. I would actually tie together your question with Bo's point. You know, if you thought about it as a 1% global bunker fuel tax applied over the next 3 years, with existing technology, existing sensors, existing low Earth orbit satellite connectivity, existing data collection providers like a Danelec, you could actually have the entire world fleet equipped and up and running in 3 years with verifiable, trusted data in real time all the time. That technology is here. We see the adoption of low Earth orbit satellite with Starlink coming from top order shipping companies. Obviously, it's become more and more common for data to be collected off of ships, and really establishing that verifiable custody chain of information is really where it starts. So if we want to talk about MEPC 80 and bold ideas and how we actually get the step function change that we need to achieve better outcomes, let's think about those types of opportunities as well. I think the goal is important, getting more aggressive and actually trying to strive for reducing emissions by 2030 and not just meeting the 2008 standard is really important. And also, are there big ideas that we can bring forward that take technologies available today and apply it to drive really rapid transformation in the market?
Nice. So we talked about goal and ambition. We've got 2 minutes and 25 seconds left. I'm going to ignore those questions for now because I think we've answered many of those questions that were asked in different ways. My last question to the panel, I'd like you to think big and think bold. So what would the industry look like if we all fully embrace digitalization? Digitalization. Who wants to start?
There'll be a lot few, like if we really embraced end-to-end, there'll be a lot few players in the middle between the ship owner and the cargo owner, because a lot of people are making money being in between, being in like the trading side. Like that whole transparency, and you've seen that in when you commoditized the whole FX market that used to be an OTC brokered shop as well, right? So you weed out a lot of efficiency. We will need like 10, 15 less % vessels on the waters. Like you'll transform an entire industry, and a lot of people will lose a lot of money.
Okay.
But that's the reality. There's so much waste, and people are making money on that waste. That would disappear if you fully digitalized end-to-end. So that would be a big transformation, and that's one of the hampering, and that's why it's not happening that fast.
Well, I mean, I think it's all about transformation, right? I mean, if we look ahead, decarbonization is going to be transformation. I think the operational model, the business model, all these are going to change. So.
I want to put a little bit of a twist in this, sure. and start thinking about, Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions, and what are Scope 1 emissions that are the Scope 3 of our clients, and the pressure that we will have. We are starting to see already some clients that are expecting to have very clear reports of how much emissions have been related to the cargo we have transferred, and they sort of expect, and the expectation of a reduction or an improvement of efficiency. So in addition to the regulation, and because this is the right thing to do, we cannot underestimate the power of the ship owners' clients in helping in this transformation, because if it is a manual process, it is absolutely impossible to get there. So I think this will add even more pressure together with regulation for the shipping industry to digitalize.
And I would just add, I think that's absolutely true, and I would just add on to that it's about ocean shipping becoming a just-in-time part of the supply chain, where there is auditable, reliable, real-time information flowing, so that everyone knows when they get a good, when their cargo is discharged, when they get their box from Amazon, that they understand to the gram what the carbon footprint is of that transaction, and what it took to actually get it to you. And I think that lack of transparency coming from our part of the supply chain is a hindrance today. It is where the demand comes from, right? It's from those interests who are really asking for that transparency. And that's the future that we can achieve with digitalization. And it won't take that long if we focus.
Right. I think the transparency definitely will eliminate a lot of waste. And I think also you look at the consumers that are coming up, it's our Gen Zs and the millennials, and they are going to be asking for a green way of shipping our goods. So I think let's eliminate the waste. I think what we can hope for is really get the goods there green and fast to the consumers. I think that's what we'll see future should be.
Bo?
Yeah, I think a few years from now, I hope that the products and services we're buying are truly low carbon, truly good for the climate. And what's the implication for shipping in that? Because shipping is a part of all supply chains. It is exactly what we have talked about today, that we know the impact of shipping on the climate in that supply chain, and that we optimize and minimize and reduce and eliminate. And the real implication of that will be that the ships of the future will be full of digital technologies. They'll to a large extent be autonomous. Safety levels will be higher, reliability levels will be higher, transparency will be higher. We know where the fuels are coming from and what their climate impact is and so on. So I think that's where we're aiming for. Yeah, we'll get there.
I love how bullish this panel is. It's great. So if I can just recap, right? I mean, we're all bullish about digitalization and how that's going to impact positively the industry. It's going to bring efficiency. It's going to bring transparency. And then I think another word that it brings that maybe I heard, is accountability, right? Accountability is really important. We heard that we need standards and regulations around this in order for us to rally the industry together so that we can create this wave to adopt, right? So with that, please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you for sticking around.